Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Cindy Lair, and I'm the program manager for the Colorado State Conservation Board. I'm also the team lead for the soil health program, and we're really happy to have our friends from the Zero Foodprint program, Anthony Myint and Leo Beckerman, and Anthony is the CEO and founder of Zero Foodprint. They are a nonprofit, and they're going to tell you more about their organization. I just want to let you know that we've been working together for a long time, for a couple of years, talking about ways that we could collaborate. And so this call is kind of like our kickoff to really make this Zero Foodprint concept more available to you all, and eventually making it available to your producers that are signed on with the STAR Soil Health Program. And so today we mostly wanted to give you that overview of it, and then we'll be following up later with another call or Zoom call that would be made available to your producers should they want to learn more about ways that they might be able to expand their acres that are enrolled in the STAR program by using the Zero Foodprint funding opportunity. And so without further ado, I'm going to remind you that it's being recorded so that we can have other folks to be able to catch up on this and learn about it later if they weren't able to be on today. But I'm going to hand it over to Anthony, who's going to get us started. So Anthony, please take it away.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Cindy. And thanks everybody for your time. We wanted to provide a quick overview of kind of our full program, but we are going to focus most of the time on the grant side of it because that's the most relevant to you all and to the farmers and producers in your network. But we did want to just give the full overview so people kind of understood it. Quick background, Leo and I both are kind of coming at this from the restaurant industry, and then I helped start Zero Foodprint in 2015 with a few other co-founders, and originally it was starting to basically create climate solutions within the restaurant industry. And then since then, it has kind of expanded to focus on regenerative agriculture and healthy soil and kind of mobilizing agricultural climate solutions, and doing so through public-private collaborations in California with the California Department of Food and Ag, the California Resource Conservation Districts, some local governments like Sonoma County, San Francisco, etc. And then we were really excited to come to Colorado and expand the program first with Boulder County and Denver, and then with Cindy and the Colorado Department of Ag and Commissioner Greenberg starting last year. And we've also kind of over that time expanded from just restaurants to all kinds of businesses. And then alongside, CDA was a recipient of a USDA Climate Smart Commodities grant, and then Zero Foodprint is also a sub-awardee on another one. And so in addition to these funds that I'm going to refer to a little bit today with businesses, there's also some substantial amount of USDA funding that's going to flow to Colorado producers through our program, and hopefully through you and then to producers. So I'll kick it off. This slide kind of explains very simply what we do, which is a table to farm movement. And that's novel and a little bit different from businesses trying to buy from farms. In this case, it's more like businesses and the food economy providing resources to farms to implement healthy soil practices and projects. It's a little bit trying to activate kind of this consumer impulse around, feeling good about their purchase, making the sustainable choice. But instead of kind of the usual premiums like with organic and others, ours is basically just a very modest premium. So businesses are sending us 1% of revenue, and then we're in turn using that to provide grants to farms and ranches. Along that kind of clarification, our focus is really on getting the next practice onto the next acre. And so hopefully you'll find that's like super aligned with your own focus. This slide kind of indicates some of that, where basically like the top 12 inches of soil is 4 million pounds of soil. We're trying to kind of build up the organic matter, and with it kind of the carbon coming out of the atmosphere sequestered in the soil, improving water holding capacity, all the different things that I think we're all excited about. And then this slide helps kind of represent that, while the producers are implementing NRCS practices and using NRCS practice standards, We're also kind of part of sort of like the new school of thought around carbon sequestration, which is focused on sort of some new biogeochemistry. And so just for a quick level set, like this GIF on the right is a blown up picture of the tip of a root. And so you've got, photosynthesis is happening, starches and carbohydrates, AKA carbs, are coming out of the root, feeding the soil biology around the root tip. So this root is like this little guy here. And then as the organic matter percent is increasing in the soil, all that, those carbohydrates and starches are actually fostering more and more soil biology. And then as each cycle of biology is like living and dying, that's building up microbial necromass. So, you're not going to probably see that on the menu at Zero Foodprint restaurants soon, but that accrual of microbial necromass is really where we're seeing, and like the scientists are kind of finding like heavy fraction carbon, long-term occluded carbon and mineral aggregate organic matter kind of building up. And so for us, it all comes down to kind of like farming with nature and increasing that soil biology. So this collaboration began just last year. Zero Foodprint also was named Humanitarian of the Year by the James Beard Foundation, and I'm on the board there. And so the program is actually almost like accelerating and going faster in Colorado than in California, even though we started in California. So at this point, many of the state's best chefs are on board in the program. And the Colorado Department of Ag's memorandum of understanding with Zero Foodprint outlines a shared goal of generating $5 million a year from the private sector. So Cindy and others from CDA are, we're constantly on meetings kind of strategizing about how we can build up this movement. I'm going to do this very quickly, but basically part of the goal of the program is to kind of consider this shift in the field, this shift in regenerative agriculture potentially, compare that to renewable energy. And so just trying to sort of decouple it from this like identity preserved buy from the good farm model, which has only advanced about 1% of acres to organic after 50 years, and instead focus more just on getting collective action and finances and resources to producers as quickly as possible. So in California, there's a lot of programs with renewable energy where $1 per month on the energy bill might be going to the local green energy program. In California, that kind of collective action work has advanced renewables to 36% of the energy grid in about 12 years. So really, really fast progress is possible once you open up collective action. And I think the logic here is kind of like, well, why don't we just get 1% from the trash bill maybe, or I'm sorry, $1 per month from the trash bill, maybe 1% from leading restaurants. Let's start getting that to the change in the field. And Colorado might have a certain amount of funds, the USDA might have a certain amount of funds, but for 30 million acres, it's not enough. And so can we get more funds? A little bit here and there adds up to quite a bit. Zero Foodprint is starting to be in like the actual climate plans for different cities and counties. So this is the one from Sonoma County. So you can see here, like create a sequester local program, implementation partner, Zero Foodprint, Recology, that's the trash company in Sonoma. And then even in one county, again, you can see like there might be change at the federal level, there might be change at the state level. And then I think what we're doing that's kind of unique in this movement is also kind of activating what's possible at the local level. So in Sonoma, 250,000 acres of carbon farming, healthy soil practices is their goal through a scoping plan from the Carbon Cycle Institute. So that's about 40% of the acres in Sonoma. And of course, as you know, that would probably cost like $250 million, or just way more money than is in the current budget. And so I think what we're doing is helping to almost be like an on-ramp and creating opportunities to start generating significant funding for this transition. So it could be 8 million a year from restaurants, 12 million from the wine industry, on and on. And then at scale, that actual like 1%, while it feels small on each transaction, like it's actually enough globally to reverse climate change and lower temperatures. And so like, kind of the good news is it's not too late. The bad news is it would take everybody kind of doing their part a little bit even. And so, some of our work too is informed by this, the findings from Project Drawdown, which show regenerative agriculture and, land sinks and carbon sequestration are maybe the top climate opportunity overall. So we could talk all about that, but I want to get into the specifics as quickly as possible. So this slide kind of reflects the two functions that Zero Foodprint does. One is getting businesses to send a couple cents per purchase to us. And then we in turn grant that out to farms and ranches through a process that my colleagues Leo and Alana will outline in a minute. But you can see the program just started in California in 2020, and we've already made a lot of progress in a short time. And so just for to drive home exactly how it works, you can see, here on a Subway receipt, Subway is participating in this program with 5 locations in Boulder for the past year, in addition to a lot of great chefs and restaurants. You can see it on the receipt here. Restore Colorado, 1%. At any point, a consumer can opt out. So I think this operator in particular just keeps a cup of dimes on the counter. If somebody doesn't want to participate, they grab a dime. He's mentioned that in this entire year, even though he was pretty nervous about it at the beginning because his staff is mostly high school kids and may not be able to explain food systems and regenerative ag and healthy soil to people, he has mentioned that he basically has had 0 opt-outs in the first year. And so you can start to see how McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, big corporations, hotels, anybody could start getting involved in scaling regenerative agriculture and healthy soil this way. We collect that 11 cents. From businesses, we're retaining just 5%, and then we're getting 95% out to farms and ranches and technical assistance providers. And so these are some of the projects that we've done in the first year through some pilots with Boulder County. These were primarily kind of organized and overseen and coordinated and validated by Mad Agriculture. And then again, that was through kind of a small USDA grant. And then through this collaboration with Cindy and the Department of Ag, we're really scaling up considerably. And so we're hoping to open up applications statewide in the coming months. And I'm going to turn it over to Leo and Alana potentially to talk about the program in detail. Did you want more on this slide, Leo, or do you want me to skip ahead?
Go right ahead, please.
Cool. And then we'll have tons of time for Q&A at the end.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony, for that background. It's always helpful to understand sort of who we are and where the money's coming from and what our perspective is. I think I'll go into that a little as well. But right now we'll talk about the Restore Colorado grants. As Anthony mentioned, we've been doing this for the past a little over a year in Colorado, kind of building up and working on our Colorado process. And we've got a round coming up, which I'll tell you about. But real quick, I'm Leo Beckerman, Director of Operations for Zero Foodprint. I oversee all of the outgoing grants to producers, as well as the process and everything. And so hopefully we'll all be working together very soon. So about these grants, essentially, our main focus is really on the metric is sequestered CO2. We use Comet Planner. I'll get into that a little bit in a moment. And I know that that's a pretty narrow focus. The reason we do that is because it is compelling for the individuals and businesses that support us, and it's a nice way for us to have a very targeted focus, that it also often stands in for things like biodiversity, reduced inputs, yields, et cetera, et cetera. So moving on, the maximum amount for a single grant is $25,000, and then there's additional funding available for technical assistance. That technical assistance is required, and generally we use that, and your expertise essentially is kind of boots on the ground to both verify that a practice is being implemented correctly, as well as provide any information or education to the producer themselves if they're looking for local expertise. We see applications from 1 to up to 6 different management practices. Right now, we're mostly focused on the NRCS conservation practices. And we're working as time goes on. We'll probably be expanding that a little bit. But right now it's those, CPS standards from NRCS. And then this is a 1-year grant, right? So it's not year over year. And we do ask that practices be completely implemented within a year of signing the contract. We know things happen. If you need an extension, that's totally fine. But this is not like a every year for 3 years type of thing. Although we do, once a practice happens and a grant is complete, there is opportunity to come back to us. Next slide, please. You can apply online. The growers can apply online. We put the link here. What you'll see here is it's not ready. So because the current funding round has yet to open, but that will open at the beginning of March this year. We have applications available in English and Spanish. And then starting later this year, this will be a rolling sort of quarterly application process. Again, online, if growers have a sense of what they're looking to implement, the actual application process can be 15 minutes. It's not very intensive if folks have a sense of what they're looking to apply for. So anybody in agricultural lands is eligible, but we do focus on growing crops and raising animals for human consumption. So we are primarily focused on the human consumption, not on fiber, for example. The property owner approval is required. We obviously don't, if the grower is not the property owner, that's an important part. And people can come back. As I said, we have requirements, which is basically that you're eligible again once a grower has completed a grant, and there's a lifetime cap of $75,000. We have a statement of need, which is basically saying that this practice couldn't get done without the additional funding. But really, that is, I would say we're open to wherever a grower is in the process, whether it's their first practice that they're implementing or their 100th. We're not here to make judgments. We're here to help that practice be implemented on the ground. So sometimes folks come to us and say, do I need a complete scope or carbon farm plan? They do not. Obviously, we want a practice to be implemented correctly and following standards, and that's where you come in. But we do not require kind of a whole, multi-year plan. We are trying to meet people where they currently are. Next slide, please. So as I said before, we are primarily focused on that CO2 sequestration. It is a competitive process in the sense that we are looking for the most cost-efficient use of dollars for maximum sequestration. Our metric, as you can see here, is called sort of cost per ton. And the way that's come to, and I'll get more into the details in the coming slides, but the way we do that is we take the total bid, which is sort of what the applicant is asking for from Zero Foodprint, and the estimated cost for technical assistance, and divide that by what COMET is telling us that will sequester. And you'll notice that we have the practice lifespan in here. So different practices have a different lifespan, and we use that lifespan to multiply out what COMET spits out. So for example, you'll get something like no-till, and that's gonna have a 1-year lifespan. So we take what COMET says and we multiply that by 1 to get the total sequestration. If you take something like a hedgerow or tree and shrub establishment, that has a much longer lifespan, so something like 15 years, and then we'll take what COMET puts out and multiply that by 15. Obviously, there's more sequestration in that woody biomass, and that takes that kind of lasts for a longer period of time. And this is all going to be available in, I want to say plain English, although I know there's some calculations to be done there, but this is all transparent and available. What I'm saying here is not a secret. It will be available in our application and guidelines, so you can sort of run your own numbers. But the point of this is to understand that the practice lifespan does have an impact on the total scoring and that cost per ton. Next slide, please. We are open to cost sharing, right? This is all about sort of, we recognize that these practices are expensive to implement, and we hope that our funding can be available to unlock additional funding. And I think that's also some of the thinking with the STAR program as well. So real quick, just a quick explanation of the project cost versus the bid, which is you might have a grower who says, oh, this project is going to cost $50,000, but they're going to bid $25,000 to Zero Foodprint, knowing that either they'll supply the difference or they might be going after another funding opportunity to make up that difference. And so that is potentially helpful both in the application, but also in the scoring process. And that bid versus true cost or true estimated cost is really the difference between what you or the grower estimates to the final cost to be versus what you're asking for from Zero Foodprint. So that bid is what's being requested. Again, cost share of funds can come from either the grower themselves or external funding, although we do have limits. So the cost share cannot exceed double what's being requested for from Zero Foodprint, right? You can't say, I have $1 million project and I'm asking for $10,000 from Zero Foodprint. So the maximum cost sharing cannot exceed 2 times that project bid, which we have here. Again, all this is available in the application and guidelines that will be up in advance of the March opening of the application. And we can talk about questions at the end. Thank you. We also offer boosts, so for both historically underserved populations, which is a part of the application, and then those farms or ranches that are in supply chains or working with Zero Foodprint businesses. That's part of that kind of collective action and circular economy. We do limit it to 2 total maximum boosts, and that's sort of a way for us to fit kind of these boosts into our existing calculation of cost per ton. Next slide, please. So as I said, we've got an application opening on March 7th, and that's when the documentation, the applications themselves will be available. In July, we'll be cutting that deadline off, and then we'll be notifying applicants of our decisions. Come August, we'll be sending out contracts and having those contracts signed. And then the way this works, and you have TBD here because each project takes a little bit different amount of time, but the way it works is that growers get 50% of the grant up front. So once a contract is signed, we will disperse 50% of the grant award. And once the project begins, a grower can send us sort of an update, fill out a quick form online, and let us know what's been done and what's going on, and request the 30% or the second payment. And then following that, once we receive word that the project has been completed and a technical assistance has signed off that it's been completed as well, the grower will receive their final 20% of the payment. In some cases, there is soil testing. The growers will be notified in advance. Testing is not tied. There's no sort of performance metric there. It's part of our funding in terms of the needs of some of our funders. So there is baseline testing and potential for ongoing testing over the coming years. Again, that's not to be tied to, that's no performance metric. And that doesn't, the costs are separate from the awards. So that's not coming out of your pocket or a grower's pocket. We will provide both the standards and the funds to get for testing on a small percentage of projects after that. And then starting in the third quarter of this year, we'll also be awarding projects quarterly. So this will get into more of a rhythm towards the end of this year. Thanks, Anthony, but we can move forward. Thank you. So essentially, it's good to come into this process with a general sense of what you want to get done and what the growers want. Make sure it's okay with the landowner. Work with you, technical assistants, to get a sense of what that's going to cost in terms of your time. Work with the comment planner, fill it out so that they have an understanding of what that climate benefit, that CO2 equivalent in terms of sequestration is. And once you have all that, the actual application is very quick. Next slide, please. So here, this is actually the comment planner for California specifically, but it's very similar to the comment planner for Colorado or for the US, but essentially this is how we calculate the modeled sequestration. Happy to talk about it later. You'll see the California one does have a specific dollar amount tied to it, but that is California specific, and it won't be coming up when you use comment for Colorado. Next slide, please. Again, just to sort of hammer it over the head, here we take the total cost divided by the total CO2 sequestered, and that's how we get this cost per ton, which is really the main metric that we look at. And this is an example of our database about how we look at and understand applications. Next slide, please. So just quickly, some examples. Obviously, we're anonymizing it, making up the names here, but you can see the way it works in kind of real life. So Pistachio Orchard said they're going to put compost on a perennial crop. They filled out the information for their underserved status, and they get a boost, which is essentially a reduction in their cost. They applied for a $25,000 grant, and they said that technical assistance would cost $2,500. So we add that up for $2,750. And then in California, it says that through Comet that their practice will sequester 352 tons of CO2 equivalent. That practice lasts 3 years. So we multiply 352 by 3. We get $26 a ton, and we reduce the 10% for their total score, which is $23.4 per ton. If you come over to Avocado Orchard over here, sorry, couldn't come up with more creative names. But you look, they're setting up a windbreak or a shelter belt, and similar numbers on the top in terms of what they're requesting from Zero Foodprint. And then you look at their sequestration of 10 tons of CO2 equivalents, and that lasts 15 years. So even though their number's smaller, it does last for a little bit longer, and we get a total here of $180 per ton. These are just examples of the way we calculate applications to score them. So, and then what we end up is taking our available funding and funding the most cost efficient ones. And that I say this because I think picking practices that work both for the growers, but also speak to our request of maximum sequestration is really important in terms of being funded. Next slide, please. Thanks. So I'm happy to answer a ton of questions. Yeah. And get into it. We will, in the coming months, have more information online that you can review. Again, as I said, we try to be as transparent as possible. So everything that I've gone over will be available for you to review. You can talk to your growers, you can plan. We're also available for feedback on applications once they're submitted. You'll see that right now we've got about a 3-month period between submission and the deadline, and we are more than happy to give you a sense of where the application stands in terms of cost per ton and ways to make that more effective or competitive. But again, what it comes down to is really just understanding the what practices you're submitting for, the comment, and then that sort of cost per ton. And all of this will be available in our application and guidelines. Right now, if you go to the site that was linked, we have the application and guidelines for California. That will be updated to include Colorado very soon. But you can really get a sense of what we're funding and how we're doing the calculations, so that ideally it's all above board and people like yourselves as well as growers can understand sort of where they stand and how effective and competitive an application is.
I'm going to throw in a few additional comments quick too that just occurred to me over the course of the presentation. The first is that while we are focused on carbon sequestration, we're not we don't have these blinders on thinking like that's the only thing that matters. In a way, it's kind of a proxy, as Leo mentioned, for many other things like water holding capacity and biodiversity. The point of me bringing that up is to say we are not operating a carbon market. And so we're not taking the carbon from the producer or whatever. You can see that there's kind of this metric for the scoring. Maybe we give a grant in relation to $25 for a ton of carbon or something, of modeled carbon from the project. There's an expectation that in the future, if there are robust carbon markets that pay $100 a ton, $200 a ton, a grower is allowed to kind of capitalize on that. And so just to make it crystal clear, let's say we give a grant for $25,000 to a grower who sequesters 1,000 tons of carbon through their project, of modeled carbon from Comet through the project. So the cost would be 25 per ton. 10 years from now, they sell that carbon sequestration somehow to some carbon market or whatever, and they get $100 per ton. at that time, this program would seek reimbursement for the grant that we gave of 25. And so the grower could kind of keep their profit of 75 per ton. We would get our 25 back and then give another grant out. So that's one comment. We can answer questions about that later and different things. And then the other is just to say that, again, with carbon blinders and different things, part of the design of this program is around the optimization of carbon sequestration and sort of equitable access, whether you're like a rich, well-established producer or a producer just starting out or different things, and the ability for different kinds of funds to come and cost share together. And so we've already kind of started to experience great local public-private collaboration in Boulder, where there's going to start being a public-facing program called Cool Boulder in March, where basically local businesses sign up, they add 1%, or they send 1% of sales to the Cool Boulder Restore Colorado program, and then that's kind of managed by us and going back out to local farm projects. And in fact, Boulder County is already chipping in funds too. So they're putting in $40,000 this year and different things. And so overall, there's some flaws. People may have, different opinions about how the program's run. And I just wanted to, underscore that in a way, what we're doing is trying to create like a broad and accessible program that can accept cost sharing from the private sector and from local governments. And so that's the concept sort of behind the design. If anybody wants to ask questions, feel free to come off mute or come on camera or do whatever you want, I think. Well, I will kick it off with a question or comment sort of for Cindy, which is that we have been talking about kind of how to integrate STAR funds and STAR applications and different things with our process. And so I think that this is the perfect opportunity to kind of like hash that out with everybody on this call and or, with Cindy. And so Cindy, if you want to kind of outline how you were envisioning that potential, almost some of what we discussed, like maybe there's a checkbox in the STAR application and kind of just directs people to us or different things.
Yes, I was also typing in the chat box to answer some questions in there too. So yes, we're trying to make it easy for the producers to have access to get more details on how they can apply for the Zero Foodprint opportunity, funding opportunity. And so what we're approaching the Soil Health Advisory Committee with is the ability to have a box to check so that the producer says they want to learn more about it, and we would turn, I think at this point we would probably turn I'm trying to think of how, we haven't really ironed out how we would, if we would take that information from the producer and give it to Zero Foodprint, or we would make that available to the conservation district and or the eligible entity to be able to make that available to help them get access to the Zero Foodprint website so that they could sign up on their own. We haven't quite ironed out that detail yet, but we want to make it so that they know about it when they're filling out the forms to participate in STAR Plus or STAR. This isn't just for producers that are working with the conservation districts. We want those producers that are independently working with STAR. It's just not STAR Plus with the financial incentives, but if they're doing regular STAR and they've filled out their form and they've gotten their sign and they've also gotten their STAR rating, 1 to 5 stars, they could also apply to the Zero Foodprint program to be able to get access to expand what they're doing on the field that they originally put into the regular STAR field assessment. Does that sound understandable? We're still working it out as to what will be done after they check the box. Will we have somebody contact them, or will we just make that website available to them to apply. We're still kind of figuring that one out, I think, with our team that's approaching, that's doing all the planning for this. And I was messaging back to Caitlin. She asked if there's a new opportunity to apply for Star Plus, and that will be coming up very soon. We have the Climate Smart Commodities funding in place, and we're trying to expand our producers that are participating in Star Plus to 450 producers, up from 125 that we have involved right now. And so we don't have anything for the field season of 2023. However, after the Soil Health Advisory Committee is able to approve our application forms and guidelines at their meeting this week, we will be putting it up on our website and making it available for conservation districts and eligible entities to apply for it starting in February. We're hoping to get that out there on February 1st to give you all a chance to apply for these dollars to be one of the delivering entities to your local landowners.
It looks like Vanessa has a question. Sorry.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, good.
For the Zero Foodprint applications in dollars, is there any restrictions on sort of doubling up? So like if producers received incentive payment on a certain field, can they apply for Zero Foodprint dollars on the same field? Would it have to be a different field? Just kind of, I don't know, is there guidance on that?
Yeah, so essentially first, and this shows up in the contract as well as our application, essentially we need to make sure that the practice could not be achieved without these dollars. So imagine a world where, you know, it was an application to, I don't know, Star or something, and then Zero Foodprint, and for the exact same practice on the exact same acres, and then the intention is just to take the Zero Foodprint dollars and put it in your pocket. Then that's obviously not allowed. If there's a serious gap and it couldn't get done, and the producer is willing to sort of not only attest that this couldn't get done, but also that the benefits are sort of because of the Zero Foodprint grant, then we're open to sort of working on that difference. And that's part of the matching, although there are certain things both in the application and the contract that the grower has to attest to. And then obviously in the there's sort of financial reporting and reporting in general as well. That's pretty minimal, but what essentially we are focused on kind of the next practice or the next acre. So while the case that you're talking about is sort of possible, really we tend to see more that it's to expand the scope, be it expanded acreage or additional practices.
Okay, and the same for like where they might be receiving equip payments. It's like additional on top of all of that. Exactly,
that's the intention. There are some cases that we see that the payments aren't enough. But in general, it gets harder to justify in our paperwork, in our contract, etc., when it's sort of that double dipping. And I say double dipping. I know that equip in particular doesn't always cover the practices. So I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I'm saying that when there's that room for sort of gray, it becomes more difficult on your part and the producer's part to sort of to demonstrate the need. And we do require that. But there are cases when we can do that. In general, it ends up being easier for you and the producer when it is additional in terms of practices or acreage.
Got it. Thank you.
And Susie asked, whether or not there would be a possibility of doing a Zero Foodprint presentation for Western Slope producers. That is possible, Susie, but I just wanted to make sure everybody on this call knows that today's meeting is really for the folks that are delivering the STAR Plus program. So conservation districts and eligible entities that are doing that. We wanted to give you the heads up first so that you can make this available to your producers, so that, and we're going to follow up with a Zoom call similar to what this one has been, maybe more targeted to the producers themselves. But we didn't want to start doing that without bringing you into the loop first, because you're going to get a lot of questions, and we just thought, let's go slow, so that you feel comfortable with this, and then we work this into a way to present it to your producers, and we will be likely sending that email to you so that you can send that to them, and since you have that relationship with them. So that's kind of how we're going about this.
Yeah, let me sort of second that. I think, historically what we've found is that the relationships with conservation districts is really an essential one for Zero Foodprint. It is kind of our main path, I guess, to the growers, but we're also working in partnership with you, because I think we're looking for this to sort of advance. These are resources for growers to implement some of these practices, but also the funding for technical assistance to provide additional education, as well as that oversight, which is an important part of our program. And I think that we see it really as reaching out in partnership with you, because the conservation districts are an essential part of our program. We can't be everywhere. We don't have the local or technical specific knowledge, and we rely on you, and hope that this is a way for us to sort of work in partnership with you to get the resources and the ability out to the growers, and to justify your time as well.
Getting some good questions here. The question is, can CD staff be technical assistance providers? I think that is possible in this, and it's more of an internal discussion. There are a lot of conservation district employees that are very well qualified to be those technical assistance providers, and we want to help support that. So, Anthony, if you don't mind me saying, that as you have those qualified technicians or technical staff on board, yes, this funding could be for that as well.
I'll say also
that
I was going to say also that we're very enthusiastic about collaborating and kind of co-creating the program with all of you. So Leo is often kind of like overseeing working groups between like the California Association of RCDs and then individual RCD staff and different things to kind of craft a better program that works for everybody. And so what we consider a technical assistance provider is not like some hard and fast thing like an IRS tax audit or something. We don't even have a definition in a way, and we kind of look to the local community or region to kind of almost self-identify who qualifies. We essentially need some legitimate kind of third-party boots on the ground validation, and often the producers need the expertise and oversight, but we're not trying to create rules to exclude anybody from participating. It's more like working with you all to create the rules that are legitimate in that region and community.
That's right. I think one thing we found, especially working with NRCS conservation practice standards, is those are national, and we rely on you to make, interpretations for locally appropriate implementation. And we don't have that. We trust you in general. We've seen sort of little tweaks or location specific advice based on your experience, and we want to follow that. We think that your local experience and expertise is just as essential as a national practice standard.
I just wanted to answer Neva's question. She was asking, you know, what if she doesn't have any restaurants or businesses in her area that are contributing to the Zero Foodprint program? Is she going to be restricted and from applying, or will some of her producers be restricted? And the answer is, you know, this is a statewide program, and as Anthony said earlier in one of his chats, you know, that this recognizes that food comes from all over the state. And so wanting to make sure that the opportunities are spread throughout the state as well. So we're not going to get into the, I say we, I don't think Zero Foodprint wants to get into the task of gluing that money to the same county or location where it was collected. This is a program that they're trying to make available statewide, and really, like he said before, being as inclusive as possible. If I misspoke, Anthony, correct me.
No, that's exactly right. But if there are participating businesses in that region, please send them our way, because our goal is to kind of build up that funding engine and circular regenerative economy everywhere. And, you know, as you saw on the slide, like, you don't have to be a, you know, super high integrity, farm to table, local source, 100%, you know, amazing restaurant. You could be Subway, but you could just be, you know, a concerned citizen, someone who wants to reinvest in the community and resilience and all these benefits.
We have another partner that's part of this Restore Colorado effort in our state, and they're called the Alliance Center, and they are working mostly on approaching businesses in Colorado, and especially restaurants, and trying to get them to participate and make that commitment with 1% of their receipts or a monthly donation. So they're actively out there recruiting businesses and especially restaurants to be a part of this program.
Just to clarify further with that, any business, any money is welcome. So it could be like a philanthropist, it could be a, you know, wine company sending 1% from their 2019 Chardonnay. The focus on the restaurant industry in part is our background in the restaurant industry, and then also the fact that that is a very straightforward sort of consumer pass-through opportunity. So if a company was sending 1% from the 2019 Chardonnay, you know, in a way that's almost like coming out of their profits or their bottom line. They're making a decision to do that. With the restaurants, as you saw from that receipt, an operator can just like put it on there, and then it's almost like coming directly from the consumer. The business's bottom line has remained unchanged. So we can operate any number of ways. Our standard way of businesses participating is 1% from a product line or a location or multiple, but we'll also just accept money. So we have plenty of, you know, businesses where like a pizza company is like, you know, we're going to send $1 a pizza from this pizza, and then we call that being a supporter as opposed to being a member.
And with that being said, individuals can log on to the Zero Foodprint website and make a personal donation. You know, it doesn't really take a big high dollar philanthropist. I mean, you can put 25 bucks in, if I'm not mistaken, just to put your support behind it.
Cool. Well,
it looks like the question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, please ask hard questions if you have concerns or criticisms. This is a great time to kind of like air those, and then we'll do our best to address them.
Yes, it's a new it's definitely a new concept, and we're just excited to be partnering with Zero Foodprint to help further reward our producers, and not just reward, but incentivize them to expand what they're doing, and make a bigger effort for them, because we recognize that what we're working on with you all isn't covering all of their costs, and but we're also recognizing that they are hopefully looking for more opportunities to do more with this, and this helps to make private dollars available for them to start expanding what they're working on with you. Greg.
I have a quick question for you guys. First of all, thank you for getting this started here. You're probably familiar with Jeffrey Crack in the Myint County area and all of his carbon work there. He was out here a number of years ago and pitched the Comet Planner tool and did a little presentation on all this. And I subsequently had a little think tank roundtable with folks here saying, this is what's coming, we need to be blah, blah, blah. So I'm glad that it's landing here. And now, several years later, it's like, okay, here I come again. I'm curious about the soil testing though. The Comet Planner has CO2 equivalents estimated based on practices. And I'm curious about why we don't want to quantify through measuring soil organic carbon based on trying to understand treatment effects of our practices.
I can take a stab at it. So we're focused on kind of efficient and optimal and equitable deployment of capital. As we started the program with California and other folks, there was kind of this suggestion that to do rigorous testing on many different projects would be both cost prohibitive and sort of time intensive and prohibitive. Like, in other words, there's no reason to like bottleneck the next practice getting onto the next acre by requiring testing and different things. And so as part of our work, we have, through this larger climate smart commodities grant, I think something like $4 to $6 million over 5 years for Point Blue Conservation Science to oversee testing in California and Colorado and the Northeast. And so there will be testing. Hopefully that informs better modeling, that informs outcomes. Again, maybe one of the farmers does a baseline and then does the testing, and 5 years later sells the carbon to Microsoft or something. We're all for that. We're just not kind of requiring that level of rigor, because going back to the Subway example, the house mom coming in to buy the sandwich on the way to soccer practice or whatever, like, doesn't need to know that it's like verified soil carbon accrued. The 11 cents can go to the projects, whether it's sequestering 9 cents worth of carbon or 21 cents worth of carbon. Like, we're making a best faith effort to keep moving forward.
Thanks, Anthony. I understand where your come from is on this. Where my come from is on the STAR Plus program is we're building healthier soils, and soil organic carbon is a key metric to doing that, and quantifying that is part of our process here. So in going back to the application process, can we make it clear that we would like to do soil testing and include costs for that in our programming here if we think that it's important?
That's an awesome question.
I think that's I think that's something that we can talk about internally as to, how we want to approach that. Because I agree with you, Greg. It is good to be able to nail down really the benefits that are occurring in the soil. And I'm fully supportive of the justification Anthony gave for that from the Zero Foodprint perspective. And I could see locally where we do want to encourage soil testing and getting that baseline so we can measure and hopefully really see that improvement over time. So why don't we take a stab at working on how we can help support that with you, so that we're all doing it together, not trying to be restrictive, because it's something that you could essentially say, hey, all of the producers that we're working with and that are doing Zero Foodprint, we want you to use some of that funding to do a soil test. There could be that the Dolores Water Conservancy District does But I'm trying to think of a way that we could make more of a guidance decision that would benefit all of the STAR Plus people that are working on this. And maybe we'll ask that of the Soil Health Advisory Committee as to how they would like to make that work as far as the soil testing goes. Because I'm with you, the more soil tests we do, the more baselines we get, I think the better it is for us in the state with measuring our benefits. And we want to be able to do that. So I see where you're coming from. I'm just trying to think of how we do it.
Great. Thanks, Cindy. I think it's a great selling point too. If we can show quantitatively what we're doing through our efforts, it's a marketing thing where we can sell more down the road going forward too. So, okay. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it within our groups. Thank you.
This, I want to just chime in real quick. I really like the thinking. I think what I would recommend is in our application, you indicate that intention, but I would not build that into your costs because that will factor into our scoring process right now. So I think we'd love to see your intention, but please don't factor into your estimated costs, the costs of doing the soil testing, because that could work against you in our process, as well as when you do, if you were to indicate an interest in testing, I think, as Anthony mentioned in the chat, it would sort of trigger an opportunity for us to highlight that project necessarily for our testing, which has a whole separate funding opportunity source. So I would hate to see your good intentions and your desire to get more information work against the grower in this case. So I don't want to dissuade that. I just want to keep it separate from the application.
I got you, Leo. Thank you.
That was a really great question.
All right.
We will talk with our collaborators about how to manage that too. So I encourage additional questions, and people should also email us anything that occurs to you in the coming months.
Sounds good. Well, we are at the top of our hour. I want to thank Anthony, Leo, and Alana from Zero Foodprint for being with us today and taking this on with us. It's exciting to think of really starting to launch something that is going to be more of a statewide focus. I want to tell you all that we just had a really nice presentation from Dr. Adam Chambers he's the state climate scientist for NRCS, not the state, he's the national climate scientist for NRCS, and he gave a presentation to the State Conservation Board as well as the CACD boards and answered their questions about the COMET tool, because he is pretty much in charge of how it's used along with CSU. And so I'm thinking we need to have a COMET presentation made possible on our coffee hours. And so we'll get working on planning something like that and getting it scheduled so that you all could learn more about how that COMET tool works, because I know it seems like a big black box that nobody knows what goes on. And so I think that would be really informative for a lot of people to be able to see more and learn more about the tool and the different tools, COMET Farm and COMET Planner. So anyway, I think we've reached our hour, and I just thank you all again for being a part of this informative webinar. And thanks to everybody who attended it and ask great questions. I think it really helps us think about how we're making it available to you all. So the questions are really good. And thanks to Raquel Sanchez for running the webinar today and recording it. And want to say goodbye for now. And please let us know if you have other questions. Contact the Zero Foodprint folks or contact us. So, all right, take care, everybody.